So this article says Hollywood ditches DEI to avoid Donald Trump's wrath. That is a crazy header, but it's kind of true. TV studios and the Hollywood studios are pulling back a little bit on this really woke agenda that they've been pushing. In 2023, Warner Bros. Discovery launched its Diversity Digest, a quarterly update on the company's DEI efforts. The first installment highlighted Latino representation in Blue Beetle and home renovation show Rico to the Rescue. But after regular updates in 2024, the digest went silent after the election of President Trump. Last week, the feature was dropped from the company's DEI page, along with the Warner Brothers Discovery commitments to equality and diversity outreach, as the company narrows its focus to inclusion. The move came as Trump has sought to stamp out DEI programs at the federal level and threaten civil and criminal investigations of private companies. Last month, the Federal Communications Commission opened an investigation of Comcast, the parent of NBC Universal and MSNBC, for possibly pursuing invidious forms of discrimination under the banner DEI. Bullying is causing a lot of companies to reassess, says Verna Myers, former head of inclusion at Netflix. Former head of inclusion. Most smart companies are just trying to figure out how far this is going to go. They're trying to stay out of the crosshairs. It's hilarious to me that with Trump, like one little threat can cause so much buckling in the studios. And I wouldn't even say that this is necessarily like a huge change. I think they're just being not getting caught in the crosshairs is a great way to describe it, because that's exactly what they're trying to do, is to just fly under the radar. But honestly, like, unless the inclusion representatives or the diversity consultants get removed from the offices and the executive teams at these studios, it's not going to change. It really isn't. Really, what's just going to happen is they're just going to stay quiet and not be so front-facing with the agenda until there's somebody else in office, to be honest. A spokesperson for Comcast said the company will cooperate with the FCC to answer their questions, adding, "For decades, our company has been built on a foundation of integrity and respect for all of our employees and customers." But the Comcast experience isn't one other media conglomerate want to repeat. Among the companies changing their approach to DEI are the Walt Disney Company, which recently announced that it was ending Reimagine Tomorrow, an initiative intended to promote stories from underrepresented communities. And it's not alone. Amazon, and just last week, Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery walked back programs that embedded DEI in hiring and promotional practices. All of these studios and even pop culture itself, from the major signals that they've been sending out, they are convinced that DEI is the way to include because it's in the name. But really, it's just kind of messed up. We're going to get to a little bit of what DEI is believed to be versus what it actually is. It's full on corrupt, honestly. And I think that's a major reason why Trump is going after it. And I honestly think there's probably like a large amount of good people who are fully bought into this idea, but it's an incredibly misguided group of people, because this movement of DEI is the same as like Black Lives Matter. Like, Black Lives Matter was meant to be something good, but the only people that the movement helped was not black people or black lives. It didn't help anybody. It just got a couple people rich. That's all it did. That's exactly what these DEI programs are doing. Disney has finally backed down after years of treating people differently based on characteristics like race and sex. For supporters of DEI policies, it was hard to tell if Disney was truly rolling back its effort or just trying to lay low. Either way, it's clear that political climate has shifted. It absolutely has shifted for the time being. There's so much that has just been infused into these companies. If you actually want it to just kind of disappear and not be interjected into the entertainment or anything, it's going to take probably years. It may not be as forward facing as it has been right away, but for it to actually just be removed and to just say, hey, everything's based on merit, everything's based on, colorblind mentality as opposed to propping up certain identities. It's not about putting anybody on a pedestal. It's about saying, hey, we are all humans. That's the right way to go about it. But the whole DEI thing has been divisive and very nasty. Now it's like, what are we going to do? Laverne Cox, the star of Orange is the New Black, our representatives basically have told us and are showing us that they are working to enrich themselves and corporations, and they give an F about us. For now, Trump is in charge and exerting his power and influence. In the face of federal probes and the potential penalties, experts believe the entertainment industry will continue to dial down explicit efforts to diversify its workforce in favor of vaguer goals of promoting inclusivity. Again, like inclusivity is not, it's not about all of these inclusive things. It is literally about merit. That is it. Are you really good at the job you are going to be hired for? Like, are you really good at it? Now, I want to understand a little bit from people who hold and are supporters of the DEI initiative and have been for years. I want to hear them explain it a little bit. So here's a guy, I just found his video and I was watching it. I was trying to understand his point of view. And there's a little section that I found interesting. Listen up.
This is an idealized state that we will never get to, but we will die trying. And different people who have different perspectives, you can see trying to bring that cause to life. The abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, civil rights, gay rights. Somebody with diverse opinions and diverse upbringing said, hold on, I'm still not included in that. And so, we start a new effort, and all of those imperfect and ongoing in their own rights. So when we have a vision, when I say inspired, safe, and fulfilled, I only have my own perspective. Yeah. And I have unconscious bias and I have blinders. But if I have lots of people on my team, we all have our own unconscious biases and we all have our own blinders, but together we have a broad view.
Okay, everything up to this point, I do not disagree with, other than like the idea of constantly pursuing something that is never going to be like fulfilled. I don't know. Like there's certain elements that you really need to strive for a goal that is achievable. And, there's a whole lot of layers to that. But what he's saying up to this point, I completely agree with. Like, everybody's life perspectives are really valuable to be mixed into an equation. I think it's what he's about to say that kind of struck a chord and was like, oh, this is exactly why Hollywood has been failing. And I don't know if this guy's connected to Hollywood at all. It's literally just a guy talking about DEI initiatives in general that I found on YouTube. I recognize his face, but I don't know what I recognize him from. Doesn't matter. Listen to what he has to say.
I need people from different religions, different races, different sexuality, different job experiences. I need people who have experience in something we've done before. And I love hiring people who have no idea about this job because they'll bring a new perspective.
That is the ticket why it fails. Because they prioritize diversity and perspective over competency. And that right there is where the dividing road happens. One group of people say, we want people to be competent, knowledgeable, and enter our industry and benefit our industry with their expertise. Another group of people say, no, you need to benefit from our life experience, not our expertise. So we want to come into your industry and fundamentally change it on the grounds of inclusion. But the problem is they are completely ignorant to how to go about the job that the industry is counting on them to understand.
I love putting people in jobs they don't know how to do.
That's crazy.
Just like I'd like taking people who are different than me and saying, how would you solve this problem? And that's the thing we forget, which is, you said it's a program based on numbers and based on color or sexuality. It's none of those things. It's about perspectives. And different people have different perspectives, and different upbringings and different perspectives, and all the infinite number of perspectives that exist in the world because of all the combinations and permutations.
Yeah.
And the best companies are diverse.
He's saying a bunch of right and wrong things all mixed up. He's saying the best companies are diverse. Yeah. He's saying that there's a lot of value in a bunch of different perspectives and different types of people with different backgrounds and their perspectives melding and creating something fantastic. Yeah, I'm on board. I think it's beautiful. The problem is when he says bring people in who have no idea how to do the job, that was stupid. Like, that's where the problem is. And that's why industries are suffering so much. And then there's another whole area as to why DEI is causing industries to suffer, is that because it promotes the monetary gain of one fake group of people doing a job, and it causes division inside the job. It causes that inclusive perspective he's talking about. It completely demolishes this idea. So there was a really interesting PragerU video that I want to watch a little section of. Listen to this with me.
In their DEI context, these words all mean one thing: applying unequal standards to ensure preferential outcomes for individuals and groups based on race, sex, and gender identity. The DEI movement is not about a sincere desire to make educational or corporate institutions more diverse, more equitable, or more inclusive. If you
see, that's what he was pursuing in that previous video, that is his goal, right? Listen to this.
Don't believe me? Try having an open discussion on your company message board or at your next DEI seminar about why the same standards should apply to everyone, everywhere, regardless of race, sex, or gender identity.
What will be said? If you say something like that, that's perfectly logical and consistent with inclusion and equality. But the problem with that is they are convinced that in order to achieve DEI, there is almost this mentality of reciprocity that needs to be afforded certain people, whether earned or unearned, based on identity, so that you diminish one group in order to elevate another group.
Try that and you know what will happen. You'll be shouted down, shunned, reprimanded, and maybe fired.
Which has happened.
DEI is ultimately about only one thing: advancing those who are not white, heterosexual, and male at the expense of white, heterosexual men.
It's not just white heterosexual men, because I don't think that it affects people like me only. What it really affects, honestly, are people that disagree with the narrative. If you are a person who looks at DEI programs in your company or other businesses or even Hollywood and say, that's not equal, that's wrong, and you're crazy for saying so, it doesn't matter what identity or what type of person you are, what race you are, you're all of a sudden the enemy. And they're happy to diminish anybody who doesn't agree with them,
regardless of their respective qualifications.
Well, which, by the way, there is some truth to it. The only non-sacred group is the white heterosexual man. Every other group is sacred in one form or another. And if you can stack, sacred identities on top of each other, then more bonus points. If
you say, well, that's fine, because white heterosexual men had too many advantages for too long, then I would ask, what about all the women? Gays, blacks, and Latinos who are born into privilege. Should they be recipients of DEI special preferences? And when do we know we've reached a DEI endpoint? When do we know that everything is finally diverse, equitable, and inclusive? There are no good answers to any of these questions. That's a feature, not a bug, of the DEI racket.
In that other video, it literally said that. The fact that it will never be achieved is in itself the goal. Like, it is pursuing a achievement that cannot be achieved. It's pursuing an end that is unreachable, right? He literally said, someone in support of DEI literally said it.
America will never be able to DEI its way out of its DEI problem. It's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You never reach your goal because it doesn't exist.
Oh.
You'll never quite be diverse enough, equitable enough, or inclusive enough. The DEI obsession has been great for one group of people and one group only. The lavishly paid DEI administrators at every Fortune 100 company, college, and university, and all those who work under them. Corporations now pay millions upon millions of dollars to so-called DEI experts to spread division and distrust among their own employees.
Right.
It may be the single most non-productive, self-destructive thing a business can do to itself.
And let me go back to that article. They quoted somebody who's saying, this bullying is causing a lot of companies to reassess, says Varna Myers, a former head of inclusion at Netflix. So in that video where they're talking about diversity consultants or whatever, that at Netflix used to be this person. So who does DEI benefit? The people who work at companies whose job it is to make sure that DEI efforts are happening. It's kind of like another level of HR, but it's a silly one. So it comes all the way back to this idea of Trump and Trump's presidency, and merely saying out of the presidency that we are not going to have DEI initiatives destroying companies and shifting culture in at its least ridiculous and annoying, and at its worst dangerous and incredibly uninclusive forms, right? It's a form of saying like, hey, the rest of the world is doing this and it's becoming crazier and crazier for them. So America's not going to participate. America is going to continuously be the land of the highest qualified, hardest working individuals. And it is free, and it is equal, and it is merit-based. And it is not going to play identity politics, essentially. And honestly, I really respect Trump for it. You know, I'm not in favor of federal governments pursuing to punish private companies, but I do like heating up the market a little bit to kind of, you know, get people squirming in their seats. I like it because it really causes a little bit of accountability in the marketplace, and some of these organizations that are super left and trying to control the narrative, especially places like Hollywood, to pulverize one point of view into the culture. And I think that it needs to have a fair shake. And I don't really want to be raising my daughter in a world that's truly unfair. And I want her to understand that if she works hard enough, that she gets a job, and she doesn't get a job primarily based on the fact that she's a woman. I want her to be competent and self-sufficient, and I want the world that I live in and raise her in to reward her for that. Thanks so much for watching. If you agree, like the video. If you disagree, I guess dislike the video or leave a comment, either one. And I'd love to hear your thoughts down there and have discussions. So really appreciate you watching the video all the way to the end. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time.